Now it turns to me to introduce the second speaker for the proposition, the Right Honourable Áine Widdecombe.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Can I congratulate Ben on what I thought was an excellent opening speech? And I would like to begin with a point that he finished with, which is this. When a child is born, you cannot take its life. Not 1 minute after birth can you take its life. It does not matter how disabled that child is, how profoundly sick it may be, how stressed the mother is, how poor the mother is, whether the mother has suddenly decided that she didn't after all want to have the child. You cannot take that child's life. At the moment of birth, it has full civil rights. It is protected as much as you and I are protected by the law. Yet, 1 day earlier, that is not so. But hang on, it's the same child. Nothing has happened in previous days or previous weeks. Nothing has happened to change that child into something different, other than the fact that finally it can be seen that it is quite visibly here among us. But it's been here among us in the days and the weeks and indeed the months before that birth. So I would say that the law, which has now been imposed, I can't put it any other way, on Northern Ireland, is a law that actually is illogical, it is immoral, and it is unkind. If a child can enjoy our protection one day, that same child should be able to enjoy our protection the day before. You have 2 babies of exactly the same age and gestation, let's say 23 weeks. In one case, that child has been born prematurely and is having all the resources of medical science poured into trying to save it as it lies in a cot surrounded by technology, everybody fighting for its life. Another child of exactly the same age and gestation, the mother has decided not to have it, and that same child, whom we cannot see, of course, all that child's future is not a cot surrounded by medics fighting for its life, but all the future that child will face is the black sack and the flames. Now, to me, there is a profound immorality about that. It certainly defies all logic if you want to apply cold logic to it, and it is hardly kind to the 23-year-old baby that could be saved but is being deliberately discarded. And I say again that the big difference is be seen and unseen. If we could see the unborn children that were being taken into the abortion clinics, there would probably be a public uprising, but we can't see them. They're concealed. And so it's easy to pretend that they aren't actually here among us. So the big question is, if we are obliged to protect life, I believe we are, then where does life begin? Where do we start saying at this point, this child has full civil rights? You cannot discriminate on grounds of disability. You cannot discriminate on any grounds at all because this child has full civil rights at a certain point. And what is that point? Well, some people will say, as we know, that it's at birth itself, but I hope that I've just demonstrated that's illogical and immoral. Others would say, no, not at birth itself, but when it's capable of surviving independently outside the womb, at that point, we can call it life. But of course, that point itself is disputed. Is it 22, 23, 24, 25 weeks? A lot of scientific discussion around it. And what exactly, again, is the logic or the morality of saying, okay, we'll protect a child that is 24 weeks and 1 day, but we won't protect a child that is 23 weeks and 6 days. Okay, well, maybe it's not then when it can live independently. Maybe it's 18 weeks. 18 weeks was the choice of the pro-life movement in Britain at the end of the 1980s. We knew we couldn't get no weeks. What did we go for? We went for 18 weeks. Why? Because by 18 weeks, the child in the womb is fully developed, and all that needs to occur for that child to survive is growth. Could not be taken from the womb and could not survive at 18 weeks, but it is fully developed. If you look at the picture of a child in the womb at 18 weeks, a photograph of it, it is perfectly recognizable as a baby. It has everything. So perhaps we should say, well, 18 weeks, and then others will say, well, no, not 18 weeks. What about 12 weeks? Because at 12 weeks, the child is kicking, even if you can't feel it. And at 12 weeks, it's got absolutely everything. It's got toes, it's got eyelids, it's got absolutely every last thing. And it is quite recognizably a baby. And so it goes on. Now, once you start trying to pick a point at which life begins, there will always be a counter argument that actually life begins at a completely different point, because all those criteria that we've looked at are purely arbitrary. They have no root in anything except an arbitrary decision. Oh, well, it's at this point, it's at that point. And that is why I believe passionately, and have always believed, and I also am a Christian and a Catholic, but even as an agnostic, I believed passionately and debated passionately during those years in favour of recognising and protecting life. Now, the unborn child has no voice except the law. Once the mother has decided that child is not going to be born, the only thing that will protect that child is the law, and therefore it is appropriate. Some people argue it's not appropriate for the law to be involved. You know, it must always be a woman's sole choice. No, the law is the only voice which the unborn child has, and therefore I think it right that the law should intervene in abortion. Now, when a baby's miscarried, we never say the fetus has miscarried, never say that. Yet a child of the same age who hasn't been miscarried but who's been deliberately aborted, you say it's a fetus. We've taken the fetus away. We don't say we've taken the baby away. And yet they are exactly the same. They're exactly the same gestation. They look the same in the womb. We can't, of course, see them. And again, I come back to that point. Now, I believe that's why in just about every opinion poll that was ever done before Westminster decided to step in and tell Northern Ireland what it should be doing in its own country, 58% of Sinn Féin voters did not want that law, and 54% of DUP voters did not want that law, and only 5% wanted it to stretch to 20 weeks. That seemed shockingly long. But I think it is right that we ask ourselves, what should we be doing apart from passing law? And this is where I much admire Ben's point about social care of babies and their mothers. And that's why I'm very proud indeed to be a patron of the Life movement, which actually provides accommodation for mothers who are going to find it difficult to carry on with a pregnancy in the situation that they're in. They might be living at home and the parents don't want it, or whatever the case may be. They provide accommodation, they provide support, and they provide support not only throughout the pregnancy, but afterwards, crucially, afterwards. And children spend the early part of their infancy in those homes if that's what's required. And I had such a house, Life House, in my constituency. And when it was celebrating its 21st birthday, I went back there. And of course, by then, some of the children who had been born there were themselves mothers or about to be mothers. And they all said the same thing. Their lives, the children's lives, had been saved by the Life movement. And the mothers all said the same thing. Their sanity had been saved by the Life movement. So I don't believe for one moment that anybody in this world, male, female, anything, has an arbitrary right of deciding when another being can or can't live. That right does not exist. There is one exception I would make. I think that the only circumstances in which you take life are in order to save life. And if the mother is really going to die, then I have no problem with saying that at that stage, the law should not lay down one outcome or the other. But that doesn't usually happen until very late in pregnancy. And when that happens late in pregnancy, it is more than possible to terminate the pregnancy while trying to save the child as well as the mother. It is not necessary to carry out an abortion, which is the ending of the child's life. An early termination can be carried out. And I think that where that is possible, that always should be. So I do not believe that it is logical, as I say, that it's moral. Certainly isn't moral to take life. And it isn't kind to simply distinguish between two children of exactly the same age, exactly the same gestation, exactly the same state of health, whatever it may be, to distinguish between them purely on the grounds of another being's wish. And so I strongly support this proposition, and I look forward to the rest of the debate. Thank you, Mr. President.